Toto Wolff's tenure at Mercedes has been highlighted by unprecedented success. Since purchasing 30% of the team in 2013, Mercedes have won 8 constructors titles and 7 drivers titles, a return that was unheard of in Formula 1. Since 2022 though, the team have struggled to find competitiveness, and Wolff has cut a frustrated figure in the paddock. With F1 teams' value at an all-time high, and Toto being an investor at heart, questions are being asked about the potential of a sale. Today, I'll talk about why Wolff would sell, what he would make, and whether his team can really turn things around in 2024. In January 2013, Wolff left Williams F1 to become an executive director of the Mercedes-AMG Petronas Formula 1 team, with his business partner René Berger becoming non-executive director. In addition to joining the team as managing partner, he also acquired 30% of Mercedes-Benz Grand Prix Limited, with a further 10% held by Niki Lauda and 60% by the parent company. That initial 30% purchase cost him roughly $50 million. Not bad for a third of a Formula 1 team compared to the current prices, but I'll come back to that shortly. Taking over from Ross Brawn, who famously carried the ex-Honda F1 team to an incredible double world championship in 2009, Wolff stepped into a team that were just on the cusp of greatness. In 2014, with an engine that needed the power artificially turning down to stop it completely destroying the field, Mercedes destroyed the field and won both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship. If they hadn't sandbagged their own engine, who knows what could have happened that season. Mercedes went on to win a record-breaking 7 consecutive Drivers' and Constructors' Championships and would win an 8th consecutive Constructors' Championship in 2021, missing out on the Drivers' Championship at the last race of the season. That incredible success has been timed with Formula 1 exploding in popularity, thanks to the new owners Liberty Media. When Forbes last valued F1 teams, 2 years after Liberty Media bought the series in 2017 for $4.7 billion in cash and stock, Mercedes was valued at just over $1 billion. Much has changed during Liberty Media's tenure. Mercedes F1, the second most valuable team on the grid, is now valued at an estimated $3.8 billion. The average value for F1's 10 teams has reached $1.88 billion, up 276% from 2019. Ferrari narrowly edges Mercedes for the top spot at $3.9 billion. The venerable Williams team has the lowest valuation at $725 million. So Wolff's initial $50 million investment for 30% of Mercedes would only earn him 6.9% of Williams now. Since Wolff bought that initial 30%, he's acquired an extra 3% of the team, putting the value of his 33% stake of Mercedes at $1.254 billion. In roughly 11 years, Wolff has made a 2,408% return on his investment, assuming he sells now, that is. Sky Sports' Craig Slater told the Sky Sports F1 podcast recently that some people in team ownership have begun to wonder if their stakes will start to decline in value soon, with interest in the sport waning slightly after the Drive to Survive boom. The possibility of an 11th team entering the sport could, paradoxically, be a signal that it's time for owners to sell up, as that 11th team would eat into the current 10 teams' revenue sharing agreement and value of the teams. Slater said, "One or two well-placed insiders have told me that maybe some ownership within Formula 1 have looked at the value of their team as increased and have asked the question, has the sport peaked? Might this be not a bad time to kind of sell out?" If you're talking about Williams being sold for about £140 million and now being worth towards maybe even £1 billion, never mind dollars nowadays. If you were Doralton or Toto Wolff or Lawrence Stroll, who bought it via liquidation, yeah, he paid off a lot of the creditors. But you've maybe paid a couple of $100 million, or I think Toto paid €50 million for his stake. It's now worth $3 billion or whatever. Does that have its own incentive to sell, when in a few years you've made such a big gain? Which is why I question, it must be quite tempting for some of these owners to maybe think about offloading it in the present climate, which is certainly benign compared to where it was a few years ago. It's easy to see why Craig thinks Toto and others could be thinking of selling up. In Wolff's case, his $1.25 billion of profit would be more than enough to do whatever he wanted for the rest of his life. Considering Mercedes' performance over the past 2 seasons, that valuation of the Mercedes team isn't likely to be increasing significantly anytime soon. Unless the sport sees another injection of interest on the scale of Drive to Survive in the next few years, there isn't a reason to think that the price of the teams as a whole will continue to grow in the way it has for the best part of 5 years. It is almost impossible to predict the markets, but there is plenty of evidence to suggest that the price of a Formula One team may be at its zenith. Before I talk more about Mercedes and their preparations for 2024, I want to let you know that over the Christmas holidays, we'll be releasing a 3-hour video on the complete history of Formula One. We'll highlight some of the best seasons, the craziest technical developments, and the stories of the most famous racing drivers in the world. We're super excited to share it with you all, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it when it drops. Specific to Mercedes is their relative competitiveness and the effect that could have on the value of the team and Toto's share. One race win in 2 seasons is not where Mercedes want to be, but since the new ground effect regulations were introduced in 2022, the team has struggled to find a really competitive solution to them. What has made that struggle worse for the team is the leaps in performance that their 2 customer teams, McLaren and Aston Martin, have managed to find. Aston Martin capitalized on retaining the downwash sidepod solution it had switched to early last year to initially produce a competitive front-running AMR23 Challenger. But the Silverstone squad were overhauled by both Ferrari and Mercedes once they adopted a version of the philosophy pioneered to devastating effect by Red Bull, while McLaren's introduction of a revised car in Austria also enabled it to relegate Aston Martin to 5th position in the standings. As much as Aston Martin's decline was down to the other teams improving, it was also due to their own failings. A massive upgrade for the Canadian Grand Prix did not work for the team, and after that, they never regained their previous form. Despite securing 2nd in the Constructors' Championship, Mercedes admits it was hamstrung by the architecture of its launch spec package, and intends to launch an overhauled concept for its W15 car. However, Hamilton has denied that the Brackley-based outfit will attempt to clone the title-winning Red Bull RB19, citing that a team has to understand how its car works. Asked if Mercedes had ever discussed discarding its car design to replicate Red Bull's 2023 Charger, Hamilton retorted, "The thing is, with the timeline you have and the limited resources you have, you can't just throw it away and start from scratch. You can't copy a car and start from that. Look at the Astons. They tried to copy a car and it wasn't the same. It's not as easy as that. You have to try and take the good parts and through trial and error just try to add other parts. But you can imagine they're also nervous of making too big a change and it being the wrong one. We need to be consistently week on week adding performance, and we have higher targets than ever before because we have a massive gap to catch. That makes it really tricky. With the cost cap in place, scrapping a car and starting again from scratch is not viable anymore. Teams can't spend $500 million in the off-season designing a completely new chassis and running multiple wind tunnels 24 hours a day. If Mercedes were to completely scrap their car now, they would just be starting from the beginning, but 2 years worth of development time and costs behind the rest of the field. Assuming they don't find a miracle solution, that just isn't the way to be competitive. Nonetheless, Lewis Hamilton has full faith that Mercedes can produce a competitive car for 2024, after seeing it in the wind tunnel in a recent factory visit. The 7-time world champion visited the factory in the days prior to accepting the trophy for 3rd place in the Drivers' Championship at the FIA prize-giving gala in Baku, Azerbaijan. He used his visit to check on the progress of the W15, although he admitted that it would be tough to make any early judgments on where the team is at with the new car. "I'm not an engineer or a designer, so it's not easy. It's always an exciting time of year because I've seen the current car in the wind tunnel," Hamilton told the media. "I always go by the wind tunnel when I go to the factory and see it evolving in whichever direction it ends up going." Team principal Toto Wolff has said that Mercedes will leave no stone unturned with their 2024 Challenger as they look to improve their fortunes following a winless year. Hamilton claimed that the car he saw in the factory will be a different animal next time he sees it following the winter break. "I popped in just to see where we were, and when I come back, it will be a different animal. But I have full faith in everyone that's working on it, and I'm hopeful that we will be in a much more competitive position next year." What do you think of Wolff's investment in Mercedes? Would you cash out with a 2,400% profit? And do you think that they can come back to competitiveness in 2024? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.